Doo-doo-doo-doo. If you know, you nova. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Here we are, Gen 5. This has always felt like the turning point of the franchise to me. Not only was it the last sprite-based generation, but there's just something about this generation that gives us a sense of finality. It's hard to explain. You know, something I've never noticed is that the first four generations of Pokemon always felt like they were escalating. Gen 1, you were just a kid who wanted to be champion, and along the way you take down a gang. Gen 2, you were more focused on taking down the gang, and this was the first time that we were introduced to Pokemon that could be considered gods. Then in Gen 3, you pretty much were saving the world from angry gods who control the weather. Then in Gen 4, you have to save the universe itself from being corrupted. So, where do you go from this? Well, Gen 5's answer was not to try to top Gen 4 in scale, but rather, the main theme of this generation was actually an introspective look as to if Pokemon battling was okay. So yeah, that's different. Another thing that makes Gen 5 notable is that instead of receiving an updated version like basically every other generation, we got sequel games that picked up on plot threads introduced in the first ones, which is interesting. Gen 5 took a lot of risks, but sadly they weren't appreciated at the time. Gen 5 received a lot of backlash when it was new, with people saying things like the Pokemon were ugly, and the small amount of previous gen Pokemon was another point of contention. In fact, I can't help but feel like the initial backlash towards Gen 5 was what ultimately led to the state the Pokemon franchise is in nowadays, but I'll elaborate more on that in the next videos. For reference, and I want to make my biases clear, Gen 5 was where I started. My first game was Pokemon Black, so I have a very nostalgic connection to this batch of Pokemon and this generation. Mostly because I just love the urban feeling this generation has. But enough dilly-dally. These games introduced 156 new Pokemon, the most of any generation to this day, so we got a lot of ground to cover. Like I said, Gen 5 was pretty urban, so a lot of Pokemon this generation have a more industrial look to them. I don't know, but that's the best description I can come up with. If anyone can think of anything else, I'd appreciate it. Oh, also another thing to note is that a lot of Gen 5 Pokemon are direct counterparts of Gen 1 Pokemon. And I'm not talking about reoccurring trends like starters and early route birds and rodents. No. I mean like several of these Pokemon are basically counterparts to a Gen 1 Pokemon, so that's something to keep in mind as we go forward. Oh, also, this is the only post-Gen 1 game that had no effect on pre-existing Pokemon. Every other generation either introduced a new evolution, pre-evolution, or regional form, or some sort of gimmick. But Gen 5 had none of that, with the focus being pretty much purely on the new Pokemon. What this means for me is that I haven't talked about a single Gen 5 Pokemon or gimmick that was introduced in Gen 5 because like I said, it didn't have gimmicks for older Pokemon, meaning this video is a complete blank slate. Okay, I've talked long enough, let's just get into the Pokemon. Well, here's the surprise. For the first and so far only time, we're not starting with the starters. Rather, this generation's deck starts with the legendary Victini, who's the Mew of this generation. This Pokemon is said to contain unlimited energy, and it's said that if you have one, then you can never lose. Though obviously that's just in lore, as that would be insanely broken and probably impossible to program, especially online. And not to mention, what if your opponent also had a Victini? What would happen? Will the fight just never end and the two trainers are perpetually stuck in an endless cycle and never being able to finish each other off due to neither of them ever being able to lose? Okay, that's horrifying. Let's just be thankful this is just in lore, not gameplay. The grass starter Gen 5, Snivy is a smug little raptor thing? I don't know, it's called the grass snake, but wait a minute. Snake, grass, snake in the grass? That's clever. Anyway, this Pokemon is very intelligent, and fitting of a plant, they love sunlight, with them photosynthesizing by absorbing the light in their tail. It's also said that you can tell they're malnourished if they have a droopy tail. Level 17, they evolve into Servine. This Pokemon is very fast, hiding in the shadows to wait for the perfect opportunity to strike its foes before bursting out and attacking with its rapid whip attack. They're also neat freaks since dirt blocks them from photosynthesizing. Finally, at level 36, they evolve into Serperior. Now a full serpent, this Pokemon has no legs, but it's still not something you'd want to mess with. As Superior's Glare has the ability to freeze anything in place. Before you ask, no, it's not petrification, they're just very intimidating. However, if they come across a Pokemon not scared of them, they'll fight. So yeah, the snake in the grass. Firestarter or Gen 5, Tepig is a fiery swine that shoots flames out of its snout. This not only provides protection from their enemies, but it's also mentioned they like to cook their food before they eat it. Sometimes they overdo it and their food ends up being burnt to a crisp. Also, when they get sick, they start shooting smoke instead of fire. Which makes me wonder how fire Pokemon produce their fire anyway. But that's a thought for another time, I guess. Level 16, they evolve into Pignite, now bipedal and also part fighting type. Okay, this is the third one in a row. Why was this such a popular combo for fire starters? Also, this is literally the only dual type starter of this generation, so that just makes it even more bizarre. Anyway, this Pokemon's flames are stored in its stomach, which it fuels by eating. The more it eats, the stronger the flames. The stronger the flame, the faster they move. Also, if they get angry, the flames will get more intense. It's also mentioned that when they're in trouble, they emit smoke, which is probably like a defense mechanism, which allows them to run away, sorta like a terrestrial version of Squid Ink. Finally, at level 36, they evolve into Embor, the big bacon. Not much to say here, really. It's mentioned that they like to light their fists on fire, and they care very deeply about their friends. So yeah, the pre-cooked bacon line. Oshawa is a sea otter and the water starter of Gen 5. Oshawa has a shell on its stomach known as the Scal Chop, which is able to convert into a blade if threatened. And also, it's a handy tool to crack open hard berries. Level 17, they evolve into Duat. This Pokemon is a much better fighter now thanks to having two Scal Chops. They take very good care of them to make sure they're as sharp as possible, and it's mentioned that no two Duat have the same fighting technique. Finally, level 36, they evolve into Samurott. Now based more on a sea lion, this Pokemon traded out its Scalchop for a new shell blade, the Seamiter. Powerful weapon able to fall most of its foes in a single strike. And just the sight of it causes most Pokemon to immediately back down. In Legends Arceus, Oshawott was the water starter, and like the other two starters, its final form got a new variant. In this game, Samurott is part dark type, and it's mentioned that it has a black heart, causing it to attack as viciously as a wave. You know, Oshawott is a very special Pokemon to me, as it was my first Pokemon. I named him Otto, and together we conquered the Unova region. And when the time came, I transferred him to Pokemon Y, where we conquered the Kalos region. But then the worst thing happened. I lost my copy of Pokemon Y, so now Otto's gone. But there's some good news. Otto spent a lot of time in the daycare, and as such, he had many children. I mostly use him to trade for Pokemon not found in X and Y, and because of that, there's a decent chance his offspring are still out there somewhere. So RIP Otto. Gone, but not forgotten. Gen 5's early rodent is Patrat, the gopher, prairie dog, groundhog thing. Probably prairie dog since they live in groups. Anyway, regardless of what they're based on, Patrat is a group-based species. They take turns acting as lookout in order to alert the rest of their group for danger. Sadly, though, they are terrible at detecting things behind them, so that's a pretty big weak spot right there. Level 20, they evolve into Watchog. This Pokemon is nowhere near as skittish and will in fact fight their foes instead of fleeing. When encountered with an enemy, they're able to flash their eyes in a way that disorients their attackers, and then they go on the offensive by spitting seeds in their face. So yeah, the burrowing whatevers. The Lola Pup line is based on terriers, and they're definitely some of the cuter Pokemon. Despite being puppies, they're very intelligent, knowing when they should fight and when they should flee. And their face fur is also very sensitive to their surroundings, acting as a radar that looks out for anything different from usual. It's also mentioned that they have perfect memory and will never forget any love it receives or any abuse it suffers. Also, as you can imagine, they're very popular pets thanks to their obedience. In fact, it's mentioned that they're a quiet species, so you can even have them in an apartment without people getting mad at you for having a dog that just won't stop yapping. At level 16, they evolve into my mom's dog. I mean Herdier. This Pokemon's fur is very thick and hard, allowing it to repel attacks from even the sharpest of sources. It's also mentioned that they're some of the oldest Pokemon that have been trained, as cave paintings of them with humans have been found, with it even being speculated they could have been the first Pokemon to have been tamed. And finally, at level 32, they evolved into Stoutland. This Pokemon has very shaggy fur, which allows it to be comfortable in even the coldest of environments. But it does have a bit of trouble in warm locations like Alola. They're also some of the nicest Pokemon out there, as they have been known to save people trapped in blizzards, and some parents even trust them to be babysitters. So yeah, the good dog Pokemon. Purloin is the first example of what I mentioned at the beginning, of how several Gen 5 Pokemon were tributes to Gen 1 Pokemon. In this case, the Purloin line is a direct counterpart to the Meowth line. Purloin is a cute looking cat, but don't be deceived. This is just an act they put on. When they distract you with its looks, they will rob you blind. but because of their cute looks, most people can't even get mad at them. And they have very sharp claws in case they do try to get their stuff back. Level 20, they evolve into Lipard. This Pokemon isn't a thief anymore, but rather they're now vicious predators. Thanks to their build, they're able to sneak up on prey from behind without making a single noise. But despite their ferocity, they're very much loved for their beauty. So yeah, Gen 5's Meowth. One of the weirder things Gen 5 did is that it had what were basically a second set of starters. These are the elemental monkeys, which are based on the three monkeys: hear no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil. And the game really wants you to use them, as the way the first gym works is that you have to fight a leader who's strong against your starter, and the game locks away any Pokemon with a potential type advantage past the town they're in, and in Pokemon tradition you can't leave town until you beat the gym. So you basically have to use the monkey if you don't want to do something stupid like grind to level 40. Anyway, the first monkey is Pansage, the grass monkey who looks like it has broccoli on its head. These monkeys have leaves on them that are known to relieve stress when consumed. No, too easy. When given a leaf stone, they evolve into Simisage. This Pokemon is very bad-tempered, and the leaves on its head now taste terrible. Also, their tail is barbed, making getting hit by them something you wouldn't want to do. Then we got the Fire Monkey Panseer. This Pokemon's head tuft is full of fire and it can reach temperatures of 600 degrees. And like a lot of fire types, they like to cook their food. When given a Fire Stone, they evolve into Simisear, Japan's least favorite Pokemon. This Pokemon has an unexplained sweet tooth, and when it's upset, it'll scatter embers everywhere in order to scorch its foes. Then there's the Water Monkey Panpour. This Pokemon's tuft is full of very nutritious water that's known to make plants very healthy when poured on it. When given a Water Stone, they evolve into Simipour. This Pokemon is able to absorb water using its, tail, which it does when it runs out of water. And the water it shoots is so powerful that it can destroy concrete. Overall, the monkeys were a weird experiment that, considering their unpopularity, didn't really pay off, and as such, I don't think they'll attempt something like this ever again. Mana is Gen 5's equivalent to Drowsy, and like them, they're a tapir-esque creature based on the Baku, the dream-eating tapir. In fact, it's even said that people believe they share a common ancestor. Like Drowsy, Muna feasts on dreams, and when they do, they release a mist, pink if it was a good dream, black if it was a nightmare. In addition, you won't remember the dream it ate, so if it's a nightmare, that's actually a good thing, I guess. Given a moonstone, they evolve into Mirshana, which looks like a fetus. This Pokemon's nose is constantly leaking out the dreams it's eaten, and it can even shape the mist into anything that's been in a dream that it's eaten. It's also mentioned that if you mess with them, that they can literally make your nightmares come true, so it's probably best to leave them alone. So, in a nutshell, this line is like Hypno, except they've never kidnapped anyone. So they're better. The Gen 5 bird, Pidove, is a pigeon. Like their inspiration, they've grown accustomed to life in urban environments. However, they're not very bright birds, as they're very forgetful, often forgetting what they are doing, even if they were just told what to do. But they're still pretty popular thanks to their cuteness. At level 21, they evolve into Tranquil. These Pokemon have amazing homing instincts, always able to find their home no matter how far away from it they get. As such, they can never really become separate from their trainer. It's also believed that there's an area in the world where tranquils gather that has no conflict whatsoever. Finally, at level 32, they evolve into Unpheasant. This Pokemon is sexually dimorphic, and thankfully, this is when they actually started putting effort into it. Males have a pink mask made of feathers, while females do not. However, females can fly longer, but males are also faster at flying. So, yeah. Males are able to use their mask like a whip, so, that's also a thing, I guess. So yeah, the pigeons that turn into a quail that turn into a pheasant, I guess. Yeah, not much to say here. Blitzle is an electric zebra. You could argue this line is like the Ponyta line, since they're horses that specialize in elemental powers, but I don't think so personally. Zebras are a different animal from the common horse, so I think they're distinct enough. Anyway, Blitzle is able to absorb lightning and store it for its own power, with them being able to communicate by flashing their mane. At level 27, they evolve into Zebstrika. This Pokemon has a bad temper, with it shooting electricity all around itself when it's bothered. In addition, they're very fast, and when they run, the sound of thunder is heard. So yeah, the electric zebras. Shocking, isn't it? Roggenrola is the Gen 5 equivalent of Geodude, but hot take, I think this line is cooler. Starting out as Roggenrola, this Pokemon is as hard as steel, but it's not actually steel type because a lot of things in Pokemon are as hard as steel without actually being steel type. Thanks to living in very compressed environments. The small hole on its center is an ear, which it's able to use as Really, its only guiding sense since it has no eyes or nose. Level 25, they evolve into Boldore. This Pokemon is so overflowing with energy that it grew crystals on these bodies so that they can contain it. However, the crystals are very valuable, so as such, they're often hunted for them. Finally, when traded, oh hey, a vanilla trade evolution, haven't seen one of those in a while. Anyway, when traded, they evolve into Gigalith. This Pokemon's energy can be used as a powerful weapon able to destroy a mountain. They're solar powered, so they can really only use this immense power during the day, unfortunately. In addition, it's mentioned that when they exert themselves too much, they start to crack, so that's one drawback. They also are popular Pokemon around construction sites. It doesn't say why specifically, but they're probably beasts of burden or something like that. Now, I said I find this line cooler than Geodude, and mostly because I feel like this line captures the idea of a geological monster better than Geodude. Since Geodude is just a rock with a face, Graveler has 4 arms for no reason, and Golem is a lizard with a boulder on its butt. Meanwhile, these guys actually feel like rock monsters, and the crystals are a super cool touch. Oh, and they're not 4 times weak to water and grass, so they're not a complete tease to make you think that they're stronger than they are. So yeah, this line is cooler than the Geodude line. Fight me. Woobat is Gen 5 Zubat. Unlike Zubat, who's a bloodsucker, Woobat is a bug eater, thankfully. Like Zubat, it has no eyes, so it relies entirely on echolocation in order to find anything. And since they have no feet, in order to latch onto caves, they instead use their heart-shaped nose as a suction cup. The mark it leaves behind is believed to be a good luck charm. At high friendship, Woobat evolves into Swoobat. This Pokemon, like Golbat, now has eyes and feet. This Pokemon's ultrasonic frequencies are so strong they can break concrete. In addition, it's said that if you're hit by the call given out by males during mating season, you'll become a lot happier. Moving on. I never got why this line is psychic type. I mean, I get that they wanted to make something different than Zubat, so they made it a type strong against poison, but nothing it does really feels like a psychic type. Yeah, there's the noises, but Pokemon that make noises tend to be more associated with normal types. But then again, I guess normal/flying is way too overused, so they just wanted something different, I guess. So yeah, no idea why this thing is psychic, but whatever. Drillbur is the Gen 5 equivalent to Diglett, and like Roggenrola, they end up being far cooler than Diglett. Yeah, I said it again. Drillbur is a more anatomically correct mole than Diglett that is capable of moving through the ground at super high speeds, thanks to the fact that it shapes itself like a drill and then swiftly burrows through the earth. Also, like real moles, their tunneling upsets produce, so farmers do not like them. Level 31, they evolve into Excadrill. This guy now has a claw on its head, and both it and the pre-existing claws are made of steel. Because of that, this Pokemon is now much better at burrowing, capable of drilling right through solid steel. They live in complex tunnels that can be 300 feet below the earth, and their digging can often disrupt subway tunnels. Which is a pretty scary thought, since imagine a subway tunnel being unrailed or derailed, whatever the term is. That's kind of a scary thought. However, other people actually use them to make tunnels thanks to their speed. So yeah, the cooler Diglett. Because, honestly, let's be real, if it weren't for the legs debate, would anyone even remember Diglett? Exactly. Audino is Gen 5's Chansey, in that they're both pink creatures that are regarded for their caring nature. These Pokemon can detect emotions by feeling your heartbeat, and it can tell what condition you're in physically too. In general, Audino have very good hearing, able to hear even the smallest pebble from a mile away. Also, for some reason, Audino, of all Gen 5 Pokemon, was the only one to get a Mega Evolution. Also, it has no lore. No, I'm done. Gen 5's Machop line, Timber is a humanoid creature holding a plank of wood, which is its primary weapon. Now, being a fighting type, you might expect it to be very fight-happy and destructive, but really they're the opposite, with them being creatures that love building things. In fact, many construction companies hire them, and they get actively upset if something halts their progress, like if it starts to rain. Also, it's mentioned that if it can hold its wood without difficulty, then it's close to evolving, giving more evidence for the evolution does equal aging side of the debate. So take that, evolution deniers. In level 25, they evolve into Girder, who for some reason has a clown nose. Anyway, instead of a piece of wood, they carry around a steel beam. Unlike Timber, who like to build, Girder likes to break things, so they work with demolition instead of construction. They're so strong that even a group of professional wrestlers can't make them flinch. They're also very show-offy, often flexing their strength around their friends and other muscular Pokemon like Machoke. If they're not impressed, then they go on the down low for a while, presumably out of embarrassment. Finally, when traded, they evolve into Conkeldurr. This Pokemon wields two large cylinders of concrete, which it uses like a cane when moving, and of course, they're a very powerful weapon. However, it's mentioned that in serious fights, they don't actually use the concrete, and instead engage in good old-fashioned fisticuffs. Conkeldurr makes these pillars themselves, and it's mentioned that it's stronger than regular concrete. In fact, it's mentioned that people actually learned how to make concrete from Conkeldurr. So yeah, the tough guys who carry heavy objects and brought concrete to man. Very nice. I wonder what Girder did before steel was discovered. Timpole is a tadpole. These guys make sound waves that can't be perceived by any other creature except for themselves. They use this to communicate with one another, such as warning about danger or just saying hello. Level 25, they evolve into Palpitoad. This Pokemon can now not only go onto land, but its frequencies can also be weaponized, allowing it to create frequencies that stun their prey before they eat them, with their long sticky tongue like real amphibians. Also, they can even use their frequencies to create minor earthquakes, so that's fun. Also, for some reason, Palpitoad is weirdly popular in the fandom. I have no idea why. I guess it's the perfect blend of ugly and adorable, but that's just a theory. Maybe it's because of its performance in the anime, but I haven't actually watched the black and white anime because I've only heard bad things, so, yeah. Finally, at level 36, they evolve into Seismitoad. This big guy is capable of vibrating his hand in order to power them up into a deadly punch that can shatter boulders. They can also squirt a liquid from their head that paralyzes prey, and their vibrations cause even deadlier earthquakes. So yeah, don't mess with the ultrasonic toads. Sock and Throw are the Hitmons of Gen 5, in that they're an all-male line separated into two species, but they're clearly related in some way. Though unlike the Hitmons, they don't have a pre-evolution that evolved into either of them to fully prove they're the same species yet. Anyway, these two are red and blue martial artists specializing in different techniques as referenced by their name. Throw specializes in moves that involve throwing, and Sock specializing in punching. Throw are a social species, often traveling in groups of 5, while Sock are always depicted as loners, who like to seclude themselves away. One thing both species have in common is their black belts, which are made from vines, that make them strong when they tie them. So yeah, the red and blue karate guys. Also, yes, I'm aware they look like Bert and Ernie, you don't have to tell me twice. The Waddle is a worm that, considering its connection to making clothing, is probably based on silkworms. Anyway, these Pokemon wear clothes made of leaves, which they either make themselves or they're made by their parents. It's pretty inconsistent on this fact. Because of this Pokemon's fashion sense, it's often used as a mascot for clothing makers. Level 20, they evolve into Swadloon. This Pokemon wraps itself up in a big leaf in order to stay warm, and it's implied that they fertilize the plants around them, as it says they make nutrients from fallen leaves, which to me at least seems to imply that their droppings are good fertilizer. Or I'm just seeing potty humor where there is none. I don't know. Finally, when given enough friendship, they evolve into Leaveney. This grassy mantis is a master of fashion that'll give smaller Pokemon clothing in order to keep them warm, which it makes from a combo of leaves and its own silk, and it wraps its own eggs in thermal tints to keep them warm. So yeah, the silkworm mantis plant thing. One of the weirder combos out there. Venipede is a centipede. This bug's bite is very dangerous, capable of paralyzing large flying types that try to snack on it. They're also vicious hunters, though they do have the flaw of charging headfirst in the battles without considering how they might turn out, so that's one issue right there. Level 22, they evolve into Whirlipede. This pupa is no joke. While mostly standing still in order to preserve energy for evolution, if they're threatened, they're capable of rolling themselves like a tire and launching themselves at their foes, with the spikes on its body being able to inject venom. At their fastest, they can move as fast as a cheetah. So yeah, not cocoons you'd want to mess with. Finally, at level 30, they evolve into Scolipede. This massive centipede could be based on Arthroplura, but that was a millipede, not a centipede, but, it could be an inspiration, since it's all just shown rearing, which Arthroplura is commonly seen doing in paleo media, and... Okay, I'm getting off topic. This Pokemon is a ruthless hunter, chasing down prey before attacking them by slamming them into the ground, and then finishing them off with their deadly venom. So yeah, the angry giant centipedes. Not something you'd want to mess with, especially since Scolipede is the second largest bug type, and they're larger than a person, meaning that they can eat you if they wanted to. Have fun sleeping tonight! Botany is a sentient cotton plant. This Pokemon follows the winds around, and as a defense mechanism, they shoot their cotton at their attackers, which apparently distracts them. Also, like real cotton, they're very absorbent, so in the rain, they seek shelter as to not get so big they can't move. And as you can imagine from the cotton Pokemon, people use their fluff to make products like clothes and pillows. When given a Sunstone, they evolve into Whimsicott. These Pokemon are very mischievous. They're able to pass through any crack, no matter how small. Luckily, their pranks are pretty harmless. They just rearrange furniture, hide things, and leave cotton everywhere. And like their pre evolution, they get heavy in the rain and can't move. So, and I quote, they have to pay for their misdeeds. Which makes me think that there are people out there who, when they catch them, perform casual vigilante style justice on them. The end. Petalii is a cute little flower bud. The leaves on their head taste bitter, but they're known to be very rejuvenating, so they're worth it, and they're used in medicine a lot. Plus, they grow back right away, so it doesn't even harm the petalil. It's also said that they live in areas of good healthy plants, so if you see them in the woods, then that's a sign of healthy greenery. When given a sunstone, they evolve into Lilligant. This Pokemon's head flower has a very relaxing fragrance, but it's said to be very difficult to take care of, as even the best trainers will have difficult maintaining it and making sure they don't wilt. Also, it's said that a female's flower will wilt after they find a mate. I'm not touching that one. In the past, Lilligant was part fighting type, which is believed to be due to the mountainous region it used to live in. Unlike the relaxing scent of regular Lilligant, this Lilligant's fragrance is invigorating. So yeah, the flower girl. The second one, I guess. Vasculine is a bass. They come in two varieties, red and blue striped, but there's basically no difference between them. However, the two colors are always fighting, and they're so violent that nothing will live in the same ponds as them, presumably out of fear. Also, it's mentioned that even scientists in universe have no idea what the significance of them having multiple colors is. And since they're the bass Pokemon, you can probably imagine that they're popular food. In Legends Arceus, we were introduced to the presumably extinct white striped breed. They're described as having very calm demeanors, to the point that some believe they should be a different species. White Basculine are also capable of evolution. If they take 294 points of recoil damage, that is, they get hurt by using moves that hurt them, so yeah, and don't faint, then they will evolve into the ghostly fish Basculegion. This Pokemon is inhabited by the souls of fallen Basculine, and no other creature in the river will dare challenge them. Yeah, that's lovely. Also, male are red and female are blue. So, yeah. Well, that's the fish Pokemon. Well, Gen 4 gave us a sandy hippo, so Gen 5 gives us a sandy crocodile. Sandile is a crocodile that lives in sand instead of water, and like Hippopotas, they're able to move through the sand like they're swimming. They also have dark patches around their eyes resembling sunglasses, which have the same purpose of protecting their eyes from the sun. As a predator, they latch onto the leg of anything that steps on the sand they're buried under, with their favorite food being Trapinch, which, if you remember from Gen 3, their evolved forms are symbiotic relationships, so that's kinda weird to think about. However, because of their small size, they're not that good at hunting, so they're mostly scavengers. At level 29, they evolve into Crocorock. Now bipedal, this Pokemon has thermal vision, like a snake, allowing them to find prey in even the darkest of light. They live in groups where females lead and the males are the ones who gather food, and they'll bury some of their food in order to preserve it for later. Finally, at level 40, they evolve into Crocodile. This Pokemon's eyes are capable of zooming like binoculars, allowing them to see prey from miles away. And like Komodo dragons, they are very persistent when chasing their prey, with their bite even being able to bite steel. So yeah, the Sandy Crocs. Pretty cool. Darumaka is based on Daruma dolls. These Pokemon are very hyper as the fire constantly burning in them gives them a lot of energy, with them not being able to rest until it goes out. In fact, when it goes out, they immediately fall asleep. Like their inspiration, they're seen as good luck charms, and, in older times people would use their droppings as a way to keep warm. Ew. Level 35, they evolve into Darmanitan. This big guy has very powerful punches capable of obliterating a dump truck in a single strike. In addition, if they take too much damage, they will convert to their Zen form. In this form, they're fire psychic types, and they prefer to attack their foes mentally instead of physically. In the Galar region, because of colder temperature, they've ended up becoming ice type, with Darumaka now being powered by cold instead of heat. Also, instead of level up, they now evolve by being exposed to an ice stone. Galarian Dalmanitan is pretty solitary species, only coming into civilization when there's a blizzard. In addition, now when it becomes injured enough, it ends up becoming enraged instead of calm, turning it into the Flaming Snowman, which to this day is the only fire-ice type. In this form, they won't stop spitting flames until they're calmed down enough, even though the flames are actively hurting them. So this form is like a double-edged sword. So yeah, the Pokemon based on dolls that poop fire and also are flaming snowmen. Yeah. Oh yeah, baby, here we have Maractus. This Pokemon is like a cactus, but with maracas, and they make noises that scare birds away. And yeah, they're a cool idea for a Pokemon. We've never had a cactus before. Yeah, Maractus, best Pokemon, 10 out of 10. Maractus sweep. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wubble is a hermit crab, but terrestrial instead of aquatic. As such, they use stones instead of shells. As you can imagine, hollow stones are not very a common thing, so they find stones that are big enough, then they melt a hole in them using acid. And because of this behavior, they're hated by sentient rock Pokemon like Geodude and Roggenrola. Also, it's mentioned that sometimes they live in a Hippowdon's pores, which is an image I really hate. I don't have trypophobia, but I do hate when tiny holes have stuff coming out of it. That's when it gets to me. Level 34, they evolve into Crustle. These Pokemon have a massive boulder on their back, which as you can imagine mean they have very strong legs, allowing them to move with such a large thing on their back. They're also very territorial, fighting each other a lot, with the loser being whoever breaks their rock. And their claws are so strong they can snap rocks in half. So yeah, the stone hermit crabs. Nice. Scraggy is a lizard-like creature that is based on a gangster, including baggy lower skin that resembles baggy pants. This Pokemon's skin is elastic, allowing it to pull its pants skin up to its neck, which reduces damage done to it. They also headbutt anyone who looks at them funny. Level 39, they evolve into Scrafty. These Pokemon live in gangs and will beat up anything that enters their turf. And their leader is the one with the biggest crest. Also, they have acidic spit. And their kicks are so strong they can shatter concrete, including ones by Conklidor, which, reminder, is stronger than regular concrete. Although it's mentioned that despite their rough aspects, they're a very tight-knit group, and they take good care of each other. So yeah, the gangster lizards. Sigalif is a strange creature based on the Nazca lines, specifically the one that sought to be a hummingbird. These ancient Pokemons were once the guardian of an old city that has since disappeared. They use their powers to attack any intruders, and they always take the same route when they fly. So yeah, the Nazca Pokemon. Yamask is a ghost carrying around a weird tablet thing that has a face on it. This is their own face from when they were alive. Sometimes they look at it and cry. Oh, also they still remember their time from life. So yeah, this is a fun Pokemon. You know, ghost types have always had the weird implication of the fact that you're literally keeping a human soul as a pet, but this one, it's not even implication, it's just straight up the soul of a dead guy. You know, what exactly determines what happens when you die in Pokemon? Because several ghost types are claimed to be someone's soul, so what's going on here? Level 34, they evolve into Cophagrigus, the haunted sarcophagus. It's said they've completely forgotten about their mortal existence and now spend their time eating gold and messing with grave robbers. Anyone who approaches them will get swallowed and turned into a mummy. And remember, mummification is a process that involves removing all of your vital organs. So yeah, this guy's basically a free lobotomy machine. It's said that in ancient times, kings used to keep Cophagrigus as a status symbol due to their golden appearance. In the Galar region, many Yamask have had their bodies taken over by a cursed tablet that's slowly depleting them of energy. In this form, they do not evolve into Cophagrigus, but rather if they take at least 49 points of damage that's not self-inflicted and are taken to a specific bridge, they will instead evolve into Runerigus. The slab has fully taken over Yamask and is now a very cursed being, with it being said that if you touch them, you'll be shown the terrifying memories of the picture shown on it. So yeah, isn't this line just lovely? I really still do question the morality of keeping ghost Pokemon still. Revived from the cover fossil, Tortuga is based on the extinct turtle Archelon. From the Cretaceous period, these Pokemon were able to dive more than half a mile and were capable of going onto land to find prey. And they're often considered to be the ancestor of modern-day turtle Pokemon. At level 37, they evolve into Carracosta. Now bipedal, these Pokemon were able to crawl on land better, and their flippers are dangerous weapons capable of ripping holes in tankers. Their jaws are also super strong, which allows them to eat their entire foe's body, including bones. And in addition, they can even eat stone and steel, which helps them with their shell. So yeah, the turtle Pokemon from the past. Weird choice to make a Pokemon based on Archelon, but also super cool as a Dino fan. Yeah, not much else to say here. Revived from the plume fossil, we find Arkin. This Archaeopteryx-inspired Pokemon cannot fly, but it did climb trees and hop from branch to branch, plus it could glide. It was also once thought to be the ancestor of flying-type Pokemon, but that theory has been discredited, much the same way that Archaeopteryx importance has been questioned due to the discovery of fossilized feathers. Level 37, they evolve into Archeops. While they can fly now, they're better at running at speeds of over 20 miles an hour. They're also intelligent and will often work in groups to take down prey. Now, one infamous aspect about this line is their notorious ability to feedist, which makes it so that when they dip below half health, then they will have their attack sliced in half. Yeah, as you can imagine, this ability has majorly affected how they're seen in competitive for obvious reasons. So, yeah. Trubbish is one of 3 Pokemon that often pointed to when people complain about Gen 5's Pokemon. I still remember how a lot of reviews from the time basically always went on about how, oh, there's a Pokemon based on garbage, they're running out of ideas. Look, it's fine not to like every character in a franchise, but don't act like one bad character means the whole piece of media is bad. Especially for a franchise of as many creatures as Pokemon. Ugh. Gen 5 had a lot of Pokemon, many of which are based on animals, so Trubbish and the other 2 Pokemon I'm going to talk about in a bit are more like outliers than the rule of what Gen 5 Pokemon are based on. Sorry, I just really hate how everyone acted like Pokemon in Gen 5 were inanimate objects exclusively just because there was a garbage Pokemon. Okay, I'm getting off topic. Trubbish is a sentient trash bag, as we've already established. Similar to how muck is sludge that gains sentience due to radiation, this species was born after industrial waste was exposed to garbage bags, which also gave them sentience. This Pokemon eats garbage, as you could probably expect, and they have very noxious fumes that come out of them that'll knock you out for a week if you inhale them, with it being life-threatening to children. In Alola, however, they're preyed on by Grimer, who are not only immune to their gases, but the smell only makes them more appetizing to the slime monster. Level 36, they evolve into Garbodor. This Pokemon now has tubes on its hands that shoot out deadly poison, and they integrate all the garbage they find into their body. This Pokemon will also put its enemies in a headlock and burp in their face, which instantly knocks them out. Also, for some reason, Garbodor is not only the only Gen 5 Pokemon to have a G-Max form, it's also the only Pokemon of a G-Max form to not be from either Gen 1 or 8. Why did they pick one of the most hated Pokemon for this? Good question. While it looks like it's covered in a bunch of toys, that's actually congealed toxic gases, which is, just weird. So yeah, the garbage Pokemon. Please stop acting like they're indicative of the entirety of Gen 5. I'm getting tired of hearing that. Besides, I actually kind of find Trubbish adorable. Garbodor, I kind of don't like the trash puffs it has. It's just never looked right, but otherwise, this line is fine. Like, seriously, it's fine. What's the big deal here? There are a lot of media that have things themed around trash. Does Oscar the Grouch mean Sesame Street is running out of ideas? No? Then shut up! Zoroa was pretty clearly an attempt to recapture what they had in Lucario, but it didn't quite work out so well this time, as I'll explain later. Like Vulpix, Zoroa draws inspiration from the Kitsune. These Pokemon are very shy, so in order to evade contact, they will often take the form of other creatures in order to deceive others. However, unlike Ditto, who's a true shapeshifter, taking on both the appearance and abilities of what it copies, Zoroa's shapeshifting is purely aesthetic, as it doesn't gain any of the powers of what it's turned into. It's also mentioned they like to take the form of small children, that if you see a kid who's unusually quiet, they're likely a Zoroa. Level 32, they evolve into Zoroark. A Pokemon that now not only has the power to make itself look like something else, they can also cause full-on hallucination-based illusions, or... Wait, did I get that backwards? I don't care. Anyway, they can even trap people in illusions, so that's fun. They're also a pack species that'll protect others by using their illusions. In Legends Arceus, we were introduced to the Hisuian forms of these 2, who are the only normal ghost types, meaning that they're also the only Pokemon who are immune to both of their typings. These Pokemon are thought to be souls returned to Earth, where they now feed on the resentment, and when they become Zoroark in this stage, They can become so angry they actually hurt themselves. So, why did this line not take off like Lucario did? In my opinion, I think it has to do with how Zoro was given to the players. You see, for some reason, these two were event exclusive despite not even being legendaries, meaning that casual players wouldn't be able to get them or possibly not even know about them. They probably just went through the whole game and then fighting the penultimate boss, it would be like, wait, why did that guy's Pokemon turn into a werewolf? Then when they try to find it, they just can't, so it was just like, okay, why did that guy have a shape-shifting werewolf? What the heck? Why can't I have one? So basically, because no one was able to get one, they weren't able to benefit unless they knew it even existed. So no one really cared about it the same way they cared about Lucario. Later generations would try to rectify this with it becoming a regular find, but it was too little too late, and any hopes of it becoming the next Lucario were thrown out the window. So yeah, the Dark Fox that tried to make lightning strike twice. Pretty sad. Minccino is a cute chinchilla-like creature. These creatures are total neat freaks, using their tails as brooms to keep their nest clean, and then they clean their tails and clean rivers. And when they greet, they clean each other. It's mentioned they are good for keeping your house clean, but they can go overboard and just make it more of a hassle. When given a shiny stone, they evolve into Chinchino. And now they're covered in white fur that's covered in oil that blocks dirt and also makes them, more immune to getting punched. So yeah, that's a thing. The oil is also soothing for dry skin. So yeah, the neat freak chinchillas. How many times did I say clean in this sentence? I have no idea. I spent my entire life thinking this line was dark type. Can you blame me? They're based on Goths, and they're the version equivalent to the next Pokemon, who I knew were psychic type, so I thought they would have been like their opposite type. Anyway, Gothita is a little goth baby. While it looks like they have ribbons, they're actually an organic structure that increases their psychic powers. These Pokemon are also able to see invisible objects, and they're known for their behavior of just staring at things. In addition, they hate having their feelers touch of them bawling if they get poked at. Level 32, they evolve into Gothorita. These Pokemon are masters of mind control, using it to manipulate people and Pokemon into being their friends. They get their power from Starlight, and it's said they're very lonely Pokemon, which is why they mind control in the first place. Kinda sad, but still, you're kidnapping people. Not cool, dude. Finally, at level 41, they evolve into Gothitelle. These Pokemon can see the future by reading the stars, and they often cry when they see their trainer's lifespan. Also, they know about the end of the universe, which causes them to be more detached from reality. Oh, and they can share this information with you. So yeah, this line's a big ball of sunshine. The Solosis line is based on cellular mitosis. These guys are very hardy Pokemon thanks to their membrane allowing them to handle any environment. They can even speak to each other telepathically. Level 32, they evolve into Duosion. This Pokemon is very smart thanks to having two brains. But this is also a double-edged sword, as while the two brains give them great intelligence and psychic power, it also sometimes causes them to try to do two things at once since the two brains have different thoughts. Because of this, it's a very unpredictable species. Finally, at level 31, they evolve into Rhinoceros. I have no idea how you pronounce that. These Pokemon are masters of telekinesis, able to use their power to move their very tough arms that are able to grab anything in a very powerful grip. In addition, when two of them shake hands, they'll end up sharing the same thought network. Also, it's said that if you drink their fluid, you'll get intelligence. But it's also a deadly poison, So yeah, the Cell Pokemon. Ducklet is based on the story of the ugly duckling, but unfortunately Ducklet's one of those just their real animal Pokemon. All their dex entries give us is just describing them as birds good at swimming and diving that like to eat moss. I guess one difference is that they splash their foes in order to escape, so that's a thing I guess. Level 35 they evolve into Swanna. These swans love to dance with them gathering in large flocks at midnight in order to frolic on the water. But like real swans, they're also dangerous, as their beaks are sharp and their wings are very strong. So yeah, the duck that becomes a swan, just like the story. Here we have part 2 of the Pokemon used to say Gen 5 was terrible. Vanilla looks like an ice cream cone, but it's shown that this is a surface level appearance. They're actually a solid ice creature covered in snow. These Pokemon are thought to have originated from an icicle hit by sunlight that didn't want to melt, so it basically gained sentience, and that's where the species came from apparently. This Pokemon hates the heat and has a very frosty breath capable of making snow form around itself. Their coldness is said to be very pleasant though, so people in hot areas like to keep them around. Level 35, they evolve into Vanillish. While Vanillite looked like a sugar cone, this guy looks like a waffle cone, which is adorable. These guys don't have much to say. They're still making cold air around them, and they still hate the heat. Finally, at level 37, they evolve into Vanillux. Now, based on a sundae, this Pokemon has a straw-like structure on its body that's presumably used to create blizzards. Also, like several Gen 1 Pokemon, this guy is apparently a fusion, with it being said that they're the result of two Vanillish fusing together. Because of being made of two beings, they have two brains. So yeah, the ice cream Pokemon. Very cool. I just wish its shiny form was better. All it does is turn its ice blue. Wouldn't it be cool if its shiny form was based on another flavor of ice cream? I know that criticism's been made before, but shut up, I wanted to say it too. Gen 5 introduced the concept of seasons, and in order to showcase this, we have the Pokemon Deerling, which changes its color depending on the season. Pink in the spring, green in summer, orange in fall, and brown in winter. In addition to color, it's also said that their scent changes. Spring has a sweet, calming scent, summer has the smell of fresh grass, autumn is sweet but not calming, and winter has no scent. Like real deer, they're a bit of a pest since they like to eat plant roots, so farmers hate them. They also like to headbutt things, which wouldn't be a problem with real baby deer, but their antlers are coming in, so, it does hurt a lot. Level 34, they evolve into Sawsbuck. This time, the seasonal attributes reflect a tree growth pattern. Spring has flower buds, summer has a more grassy, like a full tree thing, and autumn has orange leaves, while winter is barren, but now it has a new winter coat on its chest. In addition, it said that they're herd animals that are led by the individual with the largest antlers. They also migrate to different places depending on the season, so when they come back for the spring, that's considered a harbinger. Also, males get very aggressive in the autumn, which could be a reference to how fall is when many real deer have their mating season. And finally, summer sawsbuck leaves are popular for tea. So yeah, the seasonal deer. Gen 5's Pika clone is a flying squirrel. This Pokemon is full of electricity that gets discharged whenever it glides, making it so that nothing will go near it when mid-flight. They also use their electricity to cook both berries and bugs. So yeah, Emolga. Not much to say here, they're just flying Pikachus. Shocking, isn't it? Now, these Pokemon are interesting because they're pretty much entirely defined by their evolution, since the Dex entry for both the first stages, Carrablast and Shelmet, just talk about how they have a weird relationship that causes each other's evolution. Speaking of, as you can see, these bugs have a unique process, since they only evolve when specifically traded for each other. When you do this, Carrablast steals Shelmet's shell and evolves into Escavalier, a Pokemon that looks like a jousting knight. While Shelder now has to deal with a lack of shell and evolves into Excelgor. Now free of its shell, they become super fast and agile, while also wrapping himself up in order to keep moist. You know, I actually have a story involving these bugs. For you see, Shelmet was the first shiny I ever caught. Yep, I was playing Pokemon Y and I stumbled into some grass, then all of a sudden, boom, yellow Shelmet. I was shocked and I managed to catch it, but unfortunately, because of this line's esoteric evolution method, I couldn't really do anything with it. So he just kind of gathered dust and let to trade him away for a Zekrom. Yeah, I know, I'm evil. So yeah, the very odd bugs, and it's kind of easy to see why they've never done this gimmick again because, well, what are you supposed to do if you have a game but you can't find anything to trade with? Then again, I guess with online trading, that's not really an issue, but still, what am I talking about? I forget. If any of you are even thinking what I know you're thinking, I will slap you. Anyway, this is Fungus. They're sorta like Gen 5's Voltorb in that they're creatures that trick you into thinking they're Pokeballs. But besides that, they don't have much in common with the electric bombs. Nobody knows why they look like Pokeballs, with some people even believing that it's actually the other way around, and it's Pokeballs that look like them. Anyway, they lure people in with their pattern and then shoot them with spores. Doesn't say they eat them or mind control them or anything, I guess they're just jerks. Level 39, they evolve into the bigger mushroom, whose name I will not say. Anyway, these Pokemon have their arms around, which also have Pokeball patterns on it. They do this to try to lure and prey, but it doesn't work too much since why would a Pokemon go towards a Pokeball? That'd be like if a predator hunted by pretending to be another predator. Yeah, that would just not work. These guys also release spores of young funguses growing out of them, making it so that you do not want to breathe in those spores. There's also the Paradox Pokemon Brute Bonnet, but like other Paradox Pokemon, it's just, oh, it looks like it's from a magazine. So not much to say here. So here lies the mushroom whose name came away from a saying, but is now forever associated with the funny astronaut game, which is probably a fate worse than death. Frillish is a line of ghostly jellyfish. Males are blue and sad, while females are pink and happy. Anyway, these Pokemon feed by wrapping their arms around prey and then poisoning them before dragging them down to the deep to feed. And some also believe that these jellyfish are the spirits of what is basically the Pokemon equivalent of Atlantis. Level 40, they evolve into Jellicent. Once again, blue and pink for male and female respectively, with male sporting an awesome mustache that looks like the Pringles logo. These Pokemon attack ships and then kill their crews. Then they turn the ships into a castle. In addition, like real jellyfish, they're mostly made up of water. So yeah, the killer jellyfish. Pretty cool. Alomomola is a sunfish. These Piscine are very caring creatures, with them being coated in a membrane that has healing properties, which they will use to care for injured Pokemon. Now, with Alomomola, basically the only thing people talk about it when it comes to this fish is its uncanny resemblance to Luvdisc, to the point that when most people first saw it, they thought it evolved from Luvdisc. However, as you can tell by them being in separate videos, they're not related. Now, as stated before, a lot of Gen 5 Pokemon are equivalent to previous Pokemon, but that's mostly Gen 1 Pokemon. So either they decided to make a Gen 3 XP for some reason, or this is just a massive coincidence. Either way, yeah, they're not related. Although they have, mentioned the similarity in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, since Alomomola's Dex picture shows it with a school of love disc, so they're definitely aware of the complaints, they're just being vague about it, I guess. So why does Luvdisc not evolve into this thing? Who knows? Joltik is a tiny Pokemon that's only 4 inches long. This electric tick doesn't suck blood, rather they absorb the static electricity built up by larger creatures that they latch onto. Or they can suck electricity from outlets, that works too. Level 36, they evolve into Galvantula, the electric nearly 3-foot long tarantula. You know, it's funny, I have very bad arachnophobia, but both this guy and Ariados, they don't do anything for me. I guess they're too stylized for me to be scared. Anyway, this Pokemon has electric webs that paralyze anything they touch, allowing them to eat their prey without much of a fight. They can also flick their hairs like real tarantulas, which can cause paralysis on anything they touch, which can last for days. Also, they like to hang around near flying-type nests where they snare any chick that falls out or doesn't manage to fly right away. Yeah, that's fun. So yeah, the electric spider. Shocking, isn't it? Ferroseed is a metal egg covered in grass spikes. Okay, look, I don't know how I would make an Iron Grass Pokemon, but I feel like they chose the wrong answer. This Pokemon isn't ugly, it's just aggressively boring looking. These Pokemon poke their spikes into walls and absorb nutrients, and they can shoot their spikes if threatened. Level 40, they evolve into Theraphorn. They still latch onto caves and shoot spikes, but their spikes are deadlier. Yeah, not much to say here. These guys' designs are so aggressively boring that I'm feeling sleepy just looking at them. Like, does anyone actually care about these guys? These guys are such nothing Pokemon. Like, seriously. I know that every dex has its own filler, but, these guys, they just genuinely feel like they're only made out of an obligation to get this type combo a thing. Because, yeah, they look like they were designed in 5 seconds. Okay, I ranted about them enough, let's move on. And here we have the final part of the trio of Pokemon used to dismiss Gen 5. Clink is a Puro Sapient Gears. These two are closer than twins, with them only fitting the Clink they're currently paired with. No other gear will work. These guys spend all their time turning each other, which is what gives them power. Hey, does this count as perpetual motion since the movement gives them power and the power is what causes them movement? Anyway, it's also thought that these Pokemon were the inspiration for human gears, so that's interesting. Level 38, they evolve into Clang. One of the gears is now massive, with it being able to fire the still small gear as a projectile. But because they're still powered by the turning, if it doesn't come back, they die. And yeah, that's sad. They also emote by turning at certain speeds. Finally, at level 49, they evolve into Clang. Now, they have a hollow ringed spike thing around them that's been confirmed to not be sentient. They're able to shoot spikes from this, and they can shoot energy too. Also, it's established that the spiked gear isn't sentient. Now, with Clink, the main issue people have is that in addition to being a sentient object, which Pokemon fans in general act like are the worst things ever invented by humanity, people also have an issue with the fact that its evolutions just add more parts. Okay, first off, Clink is clearly supposed to look like a machine getting upgraded, and secondly, a lot of Gen 1 Pokemon have evolutions that are just, they got more parts. Muck is just a bigger Grimer. Dugtrio and Magneton are just more Pokemon. Weezing and Dodrio just got another head. So what I'm saying is that Pokemon fans can be very fickle sometimes with what they do and don't consider good character design, and that's kind of annoying, honestly. Dynamo is a strange little tadpole-like creature that floats through the air instead of water, and while they have electric powers, they're not that good at generating right now, so it's not very strong. Unless they're in a group, in which case they can make much deadlier electricity. Level 39, they evolve into Electric. His electric lamprey-like creature has a big appetite, with it satiating its hunger by wrapping itself around its prey and then electrocuting it so that it can eat without being interrupted. And finally, when given a Thunderstone, they evolve into Electros. By the way, if you don't count the electromagnetic Pokemon who were later retconned into evolving from the Thunderstone, this is the only post-Gen 1 Pokemon to evolve with it. Anyway, this Pokemon latches onto prey with its sharp sucker mouth and pumps it full of electricity. Then they drag him into the briny deep. Now, one thing to note about this line is that they are pure electric type, but they have the ability Levitate, which makes them immune to ground type attacks, aka electric type's only weakness. This means that under normal circumstances, this line technically has no weaknesses. Shocking, isn't it? Here we have what I think are some of the most underrated Pokemon. Not because people badmouth them, but because I genuinely never hear them get talked about. LGM is a humanoid Pokemon based on a gray alien. In fact, its name is sorta like a spelled out version of the acronym LGM, Little Green Men. As you could have probably guessed by their inspiration and name, these Pokemon are extraterrestrials that arrived to Earth in what is all but stated to be the Pokemon equivalent of the Roswell incident, since they were said to have arrived in a desert in a spaceship crash. These Pokemon are able to use their powers to squeeze people's brains to give them headaches, which is another classic alien trope. Also, if they go near TVs, then the screen will display strange scenery which is thought to be an image of their home world. Now, one thing I find notable is that it's mentioned that most alien sightings turn out to just be LGMs, which is interesting because it implies that despite there being creatures that are blatantly aliens, people are still looking for more. So, yeah, that's something to think about. Level 42? You get it? Well, I'm not explaining. If you don't get it, you're uncultured. They evolve into Behem. This time they're a spelled out version of BEM, or Bug-Eyed Monster. These guys can alter memories, which is always a scary power, especially since the game says there's a chance that you might have already had your memories tampered with. Also, they like to steal sheep Pokemon. So yeah, this line is based on classic B-movie aliens. Pretty cool. And I still think they're underrated. Why do people not talk about them more? Oh well. Litwick is a sentient candle with a purple flame. This Pokemon will appear in dark places and pretend to be a guide. But don't be fooled. Anyone who stays around these wax devils will have their life force drained away to be used as fuel for their flame. The younger the creature, the brighter the flame will burn. Yep. Level 41, they evolve into Lampent. This soil lamp will stalk people on the verge of death so they can devour their souls once they kick the bucket. Finally, when given a Dusk Stone, they evolve into Chandelure. This Pokemon steals souls and burns them, which makes them doomed to walk the earth forever. And they can shake their flames around in a way that hypnotizes their enemies too. So yeah, the ghost candles. Like Trapinch, this line can best be described as pseudo-legendaries. They have a lot of things in common with a pseudo-legendary, but aren't officially considered to be them. Axew is a small dragon with tusks, which they use to crush hard berries and to mark their turf. Level 38, they evolve into Fracture. Unlike their pre-evolution, which has the ability to grow their tusks back if they're broken, the breakage now is permanent. So they have to be very careful with their tusks, and they take good care of them by constantly sharpening them and cleaning them. They also use their tusks to slice their prey in half, where they'll eat one half there and save the other half for later. Finally, at level 48, they evolve into Haxorus. This Pokemon now has straight up battle axes for tusks that are super durable. They can cut steel in half without them being dullard. Dullard? Is that a word? I don't care. Now, despite this and their intimidating appearance, they're described as being a friendly species. But whatever you do not touch the tusks. They will kill you. So yeah, the walrus dragon. Elephant dragon? I don't know. Which one do you think is a more apt comparison? In my opinion, Cubchoo is the cutest Pokemon. I know some people would find it gross because of, well, you have eyes. But I've never actually been grossed out by snot, and it gives it kind of a babyish cuteness to it that just makes me want to squeeze it. Anyway, Cubchoo is a baby polar bear that, while it may appear to always be sick, the snot is actually an indication of their health, and how well they can use their ice powers. When they actually are sick, their snot becomes watery and they can barely use their ice powers. But when they're healthy, the snot is more viscous and they have stronger ice powers. The snot is also very cold. If you touch it, you get frostbite. Sorry, not sorry, I just love these little guys. I even have a plush of one. At level 37, they evolve into Beartic. This Pokemon now possesses an icicle beard that I've always had a headcanon is made out of their former snot, and they are very aggressive now. They also possess Frosty Breath, which they can use to freeze their prey solid, and they can also use it to make Ice Claws and Ice Fangs to give themselves more killing power. And if they get tired while at sea, they can make themselves ice floats to sleep on. So yeah, the polar bear Pokemon, very cool. And I just want a Cubchoo in real life. Why can't they be real? I'd probably give it an Everstone, though. I don't want a Beartic. I mean, Beartic's cool, but, like, would you keep a fully grown bear as a pet? But, okay, never mind. I'm getting off topic. Crognol is a giant sentient snowflake. Like the real flakes, they're made in snow clouds and fall down to earth. They're capable of creating whips made of ice in order to attack their prey. And most interestingly, when it gets hot, they become water vapor, but when it gets cold again, they congeal back to their original form, implying that they're more or less immortal. Which is, yeah, that's a thing. Also, it's mentioned that they're possibly the reincarnation of people who freeze to death, which would make their reincarnation make, more sense since they're already dead and you can't kill a ghost after all. Also, rather famously, this Pokemon can learn the move Attract despite that move only working if used on a Pokemon of the opposite gender, and Cryogonal is genderless. You do the math. Dunfisk is that thing, based on the Stargazer, which is admittedly even uglier. These Pokemon are not water types despite being based on fish, rather electric ground, with the electric type being a reference to how real Stargazers have electric powers. This Pokemon stays in wait in the grass, waiting for something to step on it. When they do, they release a jolt of electricity to either stun or kill it, so they can eat it. If the electricity doesn't work, then they flee. In the Galar region, due to how the mud there is high in iron, Stunfisk there have replaced the electric type with steel type. Now instead of zapping prey, they now resemble a bear trap and clamp down on their prey instead. Yeah. So yeah, the Stargazer. Why does it have a beak? I never got that. Fu is a martial artist weasel. They not only have great skill at fighting thanks to their mastery of combo attacks, which more than makes up for their lack of strength, and they have claws which are very good assistant to their fighting style. And during the morning, groups of them will practice their fighting stances. At level 50, they evolve into Mineshao. Is that how it's pronounced? I think so. Anyway, these Pokemon have long, flail-like arms they can use like a whip, and they strike so fast that most of their attacks can't even be seen by the naked eye. And if they need a speed boost, they can bite their arm fur off, which will decrease drag. So yeah, the Black Belt Weasel. Druddigon is quite the anomalous Pokemon because it looks like it's part of a line, but it's not related to any other Pokemon. They're also pure dragon type and not part flying like every other dragon that has wings. Most of their dex entries just talk about how they are cold-blooded and thus need to constantly stay in the sunlight or they'll die. And as for their habitat, they commandeer the nest of burrowing Pokemon and then kill their residents. You know, I remember when I played Pokemon Black, I caught a Druddigon, and I named it Mr. Dragon. Yeah, he was quite the formal reptile. This franchise really likes golems, doesn't it? This is the third line based on them. But I quite like these guys because I love the ancient robot aesthetic to them. These Pokemon were built by an ancient civilization out of clay, and they're powered by an unknown energy source. Also, for some reason, they like lining up boulders. At level 43, Golett evolves into Golurk. This Pokemon has jet engines allowing it to fly at Mach speeds. and it was created to protect the people who built it. Because of their origin, they're very loyal Pokemon, following their trainers to the end. But if the brown patch on their stomach is removed, they'll become very angry and destroy everything around them. So do not remove the patch! One of my proudest moments in Pokemon was when I caught a Golett at full health of a regular Pokeball on my first try. No idea why that's something I remember so much, but it just is. Honored is a little knight. These guys will follow the order of their leaders to a T, and as you can see, they're covered in blades, which they use to slice their prey into pieces. After they're done, they sharpen their blades on a rock, and they train very diligently in hopes they can lead their own group one day. Level 52, they evolve into Bisharp. This Pokemon leads groups of Ponards around, where they send them to attack foes before delivering the killing blow themselves. If Bisharp is defeated, then the Bisharp that defeated them will take over its Poniard swarm. And if they get even one chip on their head crest, they will immediately resign their position. For a while, these Pokemon were named after chess pieces, but there were only two pieces represented, Pawns and Bisharps. But then in Gen 9, we were introduced to their king, inspired form, which Bisharp evolves into after defeating three other Bisharp that are holding the item the leader's crest. This is King Gambit, named after a playstyle in chess. These Pokemon have complete control over all Bisharp and Pawniard, making it so they have a vast army at their disposal. But they're not very good at strategizing, preferring just to rush everything. It's implied this form is rare, since the Pokedex basically says that only certain Bisharp will ever become this form, which could explain why they didn't appear until 4 generations after the line is introduced. So yeah, the Living Night Pokemon. Bouffalant is a buffalo with a Bouffant. They're one of those just their real animal Pokemon that like to headbutt things, and they're not hurt by headbutting things because of their big hair. The only thing I note is that if they get kicked out of a herd, they lose their hair for unknown reasons. So yeah, the buffalo Pokemon. Nice. Well, since Gen 5 takes place in what is basically America, it was inevitable that we'd get an eagle. This fluffy little Pokemon is very brave for its size, attacking anything regardless of how big they are. They'll even attack their own parents. These guys, despite being technically labeled carnivores, are also known for eating fruit. At level 54, they evolve into Braviary. This eagle with red, white, and blue, is a very brave Pokemon, as its name would imply. They're also very loyal, as they will fight for their friends regardless of how dangerous the situation is, even continuing to fight if they get injured. It's also said that they're respected if they have scars on their front, but they have scars on their back, then they're ridiculed. And like real eagles, they're often used to symbolize braveness. In the past, Braviary used to be part psychic type, capable of blasting out telepathic shockwaves at water and eating whatever gets blasted to the top. Makes me wonder what happened to them in the interim that made them lose their psychic typing. So yeah, the patriotic eagle. America. The Volibee line is often considered a counterpart of the Rufflet line. That line is always male, while this one is always female, and they're usually version exclusives of each other. This tiny vulture isn't able to fly yet due to its tiny wings, and while it looks like it's wearing a diaper, that's actually a skull that it wears as armor. At level 54, they evolve into Mandibuzz. These Pokemon love bones, making its nest from the stuff. Also, they're not exactly scavengers like their inspiration is. Instead, they prey on weak Pokemon which they kill by dive bombing them. Also, they're the main predator of Cubone since, well, they're wearing bones. They're, not all bad though. They're known to be very caring for orphan Volibees, so that's nice. Now, one dex entry I find interesting is that despite being an all-female line, one of their dex entries mentions that they are constantly trying to attract males, even though no male Mandibuzz have ever been found. Which makes me wonder a lot about single-gender Pokemon. Are they truly single, or are there members of the opposite sex out there that humans just haven't seen? And, as I mentioned back in Gen 1, I wonder how single genders even breed. Especially male, since when Pokemon crossbreed, they're always the same species as the mother. They could reproduce asexually, but that's just a theory. So yeah, the vulture Pokemon. Like Zangoose and Seviper, these two are not related, but they're impossible to talk about one without the other. First, we got Heatmore, the anteater. They breathe through the tube they have for a tail, which fuels their internal fire, which they can use like a tongue to both burn and slurp up their favorite food. Durant, the ant Pokemon. These are a colony-based species that live in the mountains where they make vast complex tunnels. No mention is ever made of a queen though, and considering that we see both male and females out in the wild, it's possible they don't have one in the first place. They developed a steel hide in an attempt to protect themselves from Heatmore, but this only made them weaker since steel is also weak to fire. However, as a counterbalance, they're only weak to fire. Granted, it's a quad weakness, so they're automatically terrible in battle, but whatever. Also, in Paldea, they have to deal with Sandaconda, in addition to Heatmore. So good for them. These two have always confused me because they seem like mid-game Pokemon, but in Black and White, they're placed literally right before the final boss, which you probably already have a team for. Now, Pokemon's had late-game Pokemon before, mostly pseudo-legendaries and, very powerful Pokemon, but, why are these two so late in the game? What was the point? Why couldn't you place them earlier? Oh well. So yeah, the Ant and Anteater. Sweetie would be proud. Gen 5 pseudo-legendary is Dino, or Dino. Yeah, it's Dino. These Pokemon have no eyes, so they have to rely on their other senses to navigate. They bite anything that moves, and their lack of sight makes them bump into a lot of things. At level 50, they evolve into Zweilous. Now possessing 2 heads, these guys are very hungry creatures. When they eat all the food in one area, they just move to another. The 2 heads also hate each other and are always fighting for food, with the one who eats the most becoming the leader. And finally, at level 64, which is also the highest level any Pokemon evolves at, they evolve into Hydreigon. While it might appear they have 3 heads, they really only have 1. The 2 hand heads are more like organic sock puppets, which, since it was established that Zweilous has 2 sentient brains, means that one of them died upon evolving. That's freaky. These Pokemon are very aggressive, attacking anything that moves, and they eat basically everything. However, it's said that they're only like this because of how they were treated in the past. So, I don't know what to say here. Also, they have a paradox form, but blah blah blah, looks like magazine, blah blah blah, barely anything about them. Arvista is a very hairy caterpillar. They live in volcanoes and are believed to have come from the sun. They have 5 points on their head, each one capable of shooting very hot fire. At level 59, they evolve into Volcarona. These fiery moths are very heroic, often helping out in scenarios of coldness and darkness by using their powers to either brighten the darkness or using their heat to save creatures from freezing. But this line is also kinda hated in some regions, mostly hot ones since they only make things around them hotter. But they are well respected in colder regions, so yeah. Also, they have 2 paradox forms, which is a bit more understandable since Volcarona is kind of a fan favorite, unlike Donphan, who has 2 forms because. But like all paradox Pokemon, not much to say here. One of them is like a crawling thing with wings on its back, and the other's a robot like every future paradox Pokemon. So yeah, the Flaming Moths. I've heard some people say this line could be based on Mothra, but I think that's kind of a stretch. Just because something's a moth doesn't mean it's based on Mothra. Might be like saying that every T-Rex is based on the Jurassic Park Rex. Actually, now that I think about it, basically every media Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus is based on their Jurassic Park version, so I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Oh well. This legendary group is based on the 3 Musketeers, of each member paralleling a member of the famous French group. You got the leader, the big guy, one who's more feminine, and the new guy. These Pokemon protect other Pokemon from being harmed by humans, with them constantly fighting against those who try to destroy Pokemon habitats. Starting with the leader, Cobalion, this guy is said to have a heart of steel, and is a very imposing figure able to make even the most disobedient creature obey him with his piercing glaze. Then there's Terracoin, however you pronounce that, the big muscle guy. No good hero group is complete without it, of course. Anyway, not much to say here, as all we get is that he has Telekinesis and they will crush anyone who tries to hurt a small Pokemon. Then there's Verizon. This guy is super speed, able to use this quickness to quickly slash its foes or quickly save helpless Pokemon from threats. Then there's Keldeo, the youngest of the swords. This guy joined the group after being rescued from a forest fire before eventually becoming more powerful than his mentors, with him eventually leaving the group for unknown reasons. Now this Pokemon spends its time going around the world thanks to its ability to run on water, where it's constantly trying to improve its techniques. If Keldeo knows the move Secret Sword, he'll become the Resolute form and become stronger. Also, notably, it's mentioned that Keldeo had parents, implying that they're a species. I've always found it weird that the Musketeer Pokemon are found in this generation and not the one based off of France. But then again, I have no idea how far ahead Pokemon generations are planned, and I guess their whole protecting Pokemon thing does fit with the theme of this generation, so, I don't know. Also, Verizon has a Paradox form. Uh, all there is to say here, they don't even have a Dex entry, so what more can I say? These Pokemon resemble humanoids on a cloud and they're based on Japanese gods. Each of them control a different aspect of nature. For starters, there's Tornadus. This guy moves through the air very fast and anywhere he goes brings powerful winds, which are strong enough to blow houses off their foundation. Also, rather notably, Tornadus is the very first pure flying type. Yeah, every other flying type before now has been a dual type. Then we got Thundurus. This Pokemon shoots off powerful lightning bolts wherever it flies, leaving behind charred remains whenever it goes anywhere. Now, as you can imagine, these two are very destructive creatures, so there needs to be some sort of leverage or mediator between them, and that's where Landorus comes in. This guy basically acts like a cleanup crew, as any land he visits will become extremely fertile and will be blessed to have bountiful harvests. For a while, this group was a trio, but then Legends Arceus introduced the fourth member, Enamorus. This Pokemon brings spring, and they're female when every other member of this group is male. No idea why she hasn't turned up in any present games. Maybe she died or something. Now, one thing to note is that the forms you see on screen right now are not actually their true forms. If you give them the Reveal Glass item, then they will become their true forms. Tornadus becomes an eagle, Landorus becomes a cat-like thing, Enamorus becomes a soft-shell turtle, and Thundurus becomes a raptor, I guess? I have no idea what that's supposed to be. So yeah, the Pokemon that control the weather, I guess. I mean, we already had Pokemon that control the weather, so then again, I guess these are different types of weather, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's move on. The Tao? I'm gonna go with Tao. If that's wrong, someone please correct me. Is based on the concept of yin and yang. According to legend, this trio used to be a single being known only as the original dragon. However, it was once owned by two brothers who had different ideologies in life, which made them break out into argument. In response to this, the dragon split into two beings, matching the ideology of the brother. There's Reshiram, the white dragon who believes in truth, burning down kingdoms that get consumed by greed, while Zekrom, the black dragon, believes in ideals, with people getting zapped if they lose righteousness in their hearts. However, when the dragon split in half, it also left behind an empty husk. This is Kyurem, who represents people who don't follow either yin or yang. This Pokemon is very unstable, having to use ice to keep itself together. And it's constantly seeking out beings who represent truth and ideals in an attempt to be whole again. Now, Kyurem continues the trend started by Rayquaza, a legendary who looks like they're connected to the Pox legendaries of the initial game release, but we don't have the details yet, until they get their own game that confirms what their relation is. There has got to be a shorter term for this. But what makes Kyurem special is that it got two games, as Gen 5 got sequels instead of a third version. In these games, Kyurem has the ability to fuse with either Reshiram or Zekrom to become white or black Kyurem, respectively. So yeah, canonical Pokemon fusions. How lovely. Meloetta is a Pokemon able to sing melodies that are able to affect the mood of whoever hears them. They also have an alternate form they turn into whenever they use their signature move Relic Song. Sadly, they never appeared in a game where form differences have dex entry, so we don't know what the in-universe lore here is. Not much else to say here, it's just the music Pokemon. Genesect is a robotic cockroach thing. This guy was a former fossil Pokemon revived by the bad guys of Gen 5, that was then covered in robotic armor, and given a cannon on its back. It can swap out its drive to change the typing of its signature move, too. You know what, I'm just gonna say it. The fact that Genesect is event-only is genuinely stupid. With other event-only Pokemon, it sucks, but at least it's somewhat justifiable since they're Pokemon that are very elusive, or have warping abilities or something like that. Genesect is just a robot! It has no reason to be this elusive! Like, why couldn't it just be a post-game catch like Mewtwo was? But no, they're just like, hey, let's make this Pokemon that has no mystical qualities whatsoever an event only, because why not? Why not? Ugh. So yeah, I hate the fact that Genesect is event only. It has literally no reason to do so. Well, that's all the Pokemon introduced in Gen 5. That was quite the long video, wasn't it? Join me next time when we go over to PokeFranch to look at the Pokemon introduced in Gen 6. Which, considering that from this point on we're not dealing with triple digits anymore, will be significantly easier to deal with. So, until next time, I've been Mr. G. Goodbye.